Well, good evening, and welcome to Writers in Conversation. As most of you know, I'm Carole Burns, and I'm head of creative writing, which is within the English department, and we run this series every semester in association with Nuffield Southampton Theatres. We are thrilled to have Alex Wheatle with us here tonight, and Alex wrote well-reviewed novels set mainly in London for about 15 years.
Yeah.
6 in all, beginning in 1999 with the acclaimed Brixton Rock, and then all the way to the also well-reviewed Brenton Brown in 2011, which was praised for its rich layering of motive and emotion, as well as its robust dialogue, streetwise humor, and muscular, mischievous vernacular. Yet it is newer work for young adults that has given him the kind of recognition that he's deserved. Nominations for the Carnegie Medal and last year, the Guardian's Children's Writing Prize. Himself born in London, he brings to life characters at least somewhat like the kids he grew up with. Lamar in Little Bit, who tries to woo a beautiful girl as a gang tries to woo him. His friend McKay in Crongton Nights, which won him the Guardian Prize. Tonight, he'll be reading from and talking about the latest in the series, Straight Outta Crongton, in which the hard-talking, soft-hearted Mo tries to deal with losing her best friend to his girlfriend and her mother's loser boyfriend. So, I also think Alex is our first writer in conversation with an MBE for his contribution.
Is that right?
I think so.
My friends say it was a member of the Brixton Empire. So.
There we go. So, we are looking forward to hearing you read from your work first, and then...
Okay, well, shall I do that first? Okay. I usually stand up and read, because I'm quite fidgety as a person. So let me stand up and... I guess some of you have maybe sampled this already. Am I right? How many of you have sampled it already? Oh, quite a number of you. Well, basically, I was watching... in fact, it was my son who said, "Dad, you've got to watch this film, Baby Boy." Anybody heard of Baby Boy? It's a film with, who's the guy who sang in the Coca-Cola advert? Was it Tyrese? My daughter really fancies him anyway. Anyway, it's a story about this young man in LA, lives with his mother. Father's not around, but his mother's got this boyfriend who the young man just does not get on with, and they get into a fight and all sorts. And it kind of struck me that, that when we're talking about a narrative about the inner city, it always seems to be from a male perspective. And so, and this is the kind of the seed that I had that started Straight Outta Crongton. I thought, you know, well, women live there too. And I remember also watching Top Boy. Anybody seen Top Boy? That was on Channel 4, was it 2 or 3 years ago? It was a series. And again, it was set in the inner city, but it's always the male perspective. But obviously, young women live there too. And so I felt it deserved a story from a young woman's perspective. And so I set up my scene, because as a writer, before I start to write a single word, I try to set up some kind of environment for the main character. So I built Mo Baker. I had her living with her mother and her mother's boyfriend. And to throw a spanner in the works, I had Mo's mother with some kind of deep, distant secret that she's traumatized about, that happened in her young life. So I needed to build a little skeleton of a living environment for Mo's household. So I did that, and the main narrative drive is this friction between Mo and her mother's boyfriend. And at the early stages of the book, she's basically abused in her own bed, violently abused. She's pushed out of bed, kicked out of bed by her mum's boyfriend, and she's persuaded to go to the police. And so she makes a report, but she cannot quite go through to the end of the statement. And she kind of runs out, but she doesn't tell her mother about it. But unwittingly for her, the police have to report this to her mother. So at this stage of the book, she's just coming home from school, unknowing, she doesn't know that her mother knows that she's made this complaint to the police. So I'll read from that section. I pushed the key into the lock. I checked my mobile. It was just after 6. I walked along the hallway. The floor was dust-free. Mum must have got her ass up and her Mrs. Sheen on. The radio wasn't blaring, so I guess Mum was at work. Then I caught a whiff of tobacco from the kitchen and I headed there. Lloyd and Mum were sitting at the table, holding each other's hands. Lip stains marked 2 coffee mugs. Bourbon crumbs were sprinkled on a saucer. The skin surrounding Mum's eyes was 2 tones darker than the rest of her face. The ashtray was full. 4 unopened beer cans were sitting next to it. They both looked at me like I had crapped on their Valentine's Day cards. Cristiano Ronaldo broke his big toe? I asked. Lloyd shook his head. Mum stroked his forearms as if she was trying to revive a dead squirrel. It took her a few seconds to look at me. Her gaze hardened like a gone-wrong hypnotist. Why? She asked. Why what? I replied. She stood up. In, out, she breathed, veins throbbing, lips trembling, waiting for that moment to launch her cuss attack. Then it hit me, hard, like the tallest slab in Crongton had come down on my forehead. The feds had called. Her hand groped for Lloyd's shoulder before the eruption. In, out. Her arteries danced like trapped worms in her neck. Lloyd stared at the floor, doing his best to keep his mouth sealed. Mum must have talked him into a promise of silence. Good call. Can't I have any freaking happiness? Mum screamed. Don't I deserve that after all these years? Lord help me, I've put up with enough lowlives treating me like shit. Do you know that when I had you, I could have put you in a home? My life would have been so much freaking easier, but I didn't. I kept you. And this is how you thank me? Your boyfriend boxed me out of bed, Mum. What was I supposed to do? I glared at Lloyd, challenged him with my eyes. I'd much rather go to war with him than Mum. He looked away and chomped his lip. I told you, he said he was sorry. Mum spat back. You wound him up yesterday. You kicked him. That's no excuse, I raged. When he clapped me out of bed, I didn't boot him first, did I? How can you allow that in our own flat? You're meant to protect me. Mo, I'm really sorry for that, Lloyd interrupted. But I did not retaliate when you kicked me yesterday, did I? Elaine's voice was in my head. She would not tolerate this. If you're so sorry, then get your droopy behind out of our flat, I raged at him. I'm not living with anybody who puts their claw on me. Did Elaine put you up to this? Mum asked. Did she? Tell her to mind her own freaking business. I've always said that girl's mouth is too big, just like her mum. Giving her opinions when no one wants to hear them. Tell her to stop poking her nose into other people's business. She should worry about her old man carrying on with that rental crutch from Crongton Green. Elaine's got nothing to do with it, and don't bring her fam into it. Then why did he go to the police? You know what they're like, framing and beating up people, especially the people you like to go around with. They've been around here today looking for Lloyd. That's all he freaking needs. He's been out there every day looking for work. He's trying to make a new start. They've been asking all sorts of questions. I was so worried I didn't go to work. I bet you were worried. Who else is going to buy you your beer? You never fretted so much about me. Do you know what could have happened to him? Do you? You know he's out of license, don't you? No, I don't freaking know, but I couldn't give one Quaker oat what happens to him. That's not cool for Mo, Lloyd protested, standing up. I am and will be your mum's man. We can all make a go of this, but you're making it very difficult. You think this is difficult? You haven't seen shit yet, and you're not going to raise your fat hand to me again. I swear if you do, I'll do something much worse than squealing to the feds. If he goes back inside, it'll be on your conscience, Mum ranted. There's Jason to think of. He needs his dad. Did you think about that before you snitched to the police? Did you? You're depriving that poor boy of his dad. Mum, you don't get it, do you? He hit me. Did you think of that? Doesn't that clang your alarm bell? I'll stop there.
Well, you had me. I could have kind of listened to many, many more pages. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. It's great to hear you read your work. I mean, it's alive on the page, but you really like sort of speak it the way of course, you're hearing it in your head.
That's how I write it.
Yeah.
You know, I sit down and I close my eyes and I just imagine these characters going at it. You know, so and that's how the writing comes. That's where the writing comes from. That urgency, that attitude. You know, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
When I created Mo and her mum, this is what I hear in my head. You know, so I think in 3D. You know, with the characters, you know, I can't write a character unless I can't hear them. I have to hear them in my head before I can put it on the page.
Yeah. I was interested, I know in Rebecca's module, they're talking about openings. They have an assessment due soon about openings. And one of the things that struck me, you said that one of the things you started with was that like fight where he sort of dragged her out of bed, but you actually start after that fight, a couple of days after that fight. Do you remember how that decision came about?
I just wanted a bit of backstory, if you like, and sometimes it's nice to allude to backstory, something that's happened recently, and I just wanted her to have some kind of history before, you know, there's a living history between Mo and Lloyd before you actually get to the first page. And for me, I don't like to do that in boring, what's the word they use in films?
Which one?
I can't think of the word, but yes, this was, you're
what
better
was the
than
word?
me. Exposition.
Exposition.
Yeah, I didn't want to do it that way. I'd much rather do my exposition in dialogue. You know, that served me well because it increases the dramatic tension rather than, 2 days ago, Mo had an incident with her mother's boyfriend where this incident happened and blah, blah, blah. You know, that slows down the tension. And so for me, I always try to make it come out in dialogue. And that's why my novels are dialogue driven. And so I wanted to come in and just grab the reader straight away. I mean, I think the first line says, and so I'm immediately drawing you in. Mum, why'd you let him take my dinner money? And so I italicize him. And so the reader's thinking, who is this guy? Who is he? Is it granddad? Is it dad? Who is it? And so obviously you want to read more. I mean, this is not one line. I mean, it took me 5 days to get to that one line because I'm thinking, okay, I want to tease you. I want to entice you. I want you to read the next line. And that was the best one I had in 5 days of thinking. And so sometimes writing is not just going to your desk and writing what first comes into your head. No, it's not. It's deciding, okay, what is the hook? What is the hook? And sometimes you've got to spend a lot of time over that hook to pull the reader in, because if any editor, any screen producer or whatever, when they look at your raw material, they're going to look at that first paragraph. And if it doesn't grab them, we're not going to read it, not going to turn over the page. Yeah. So you have to draw them in. So that's why I take a lot of time working on my first 2 pages. You know, and the first paragraph, I spend longer on the first paragraph or chapter than I do, you know, for instance, when I get to the middle of the book, I'm racing through. I've got you now. I've got you by the balls now. You're going to stay with me. You're going to know what's, you know, you're going to want to know what happens to Mo. But for me to address Mo's situation, I have to, okay, reader, right, I'm going to hit you with this. Don't you dare put me down. So that's the attitude I'm having when I first sit down and create the first few pages. Yeah.
Do you remember any of those lines you threw away?
Any of the lines that?
Any of the first lines you threw away because they weren't good enough?
Oh Lord, that'd be too embarrassing.
Expunge them from your mind.
That'd be too embarrassing. I think at one stage I had Mo coming in and cooking food or whatever. I thought, no. And then I had Mo and her friend Elaine discussing what they're going to wear to school or eyelashes or something. No. And so, yeah, there was many goes at it, many 15, 20, probably even more, before I got that first line.
I suppose that first line also works, not just because it's about food, which we all care a lot about, but because it's about her mother's betrayal.
Yeah. Yes, so really, sometimes you get, especially in film schools, where, okay, sum up your film in 1 page. And so the students go ahead and they sum it up in one page, and then they're asked to, okay, now sum it up in half a page. The students go ahead, and then they said, okay, sum it up in a sentence. And that's very hard. It's very hard to sum up your whole narrative in one sentence. And then, you know, the tutor is really pushing it hard when they say, okay, give me one line to sum up your... So that's what I've done with this first line. You know, the whole theme of the book, I mean, it triggers off with this one line, Mum, why'd you let him take my dinner money?
Right.
So again, it alludes of betrayal, of what's going on in this household. Why is Mum allowing this to happen? And so I'm planting that in the reader's mind. So already I'm asking you to be on Mo's side.
Yeah.
So in a way, I'm manipulating your senses, your brain, whatever. You know, I'm manipulating you. Okay, I'm going to be on this first voice narratives. I'm with her. I'm with her all the way.
Yeah.
And so even when she makes mistakes, even when she makes wrong choices, because I set it up like this, you want to, you know, back her. Even when you might halfway through why is she doing this? But you're going to keep backing her because you've invested so heavily in those first few pages.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that's one of the reasons that she is so appealing as a character? Because she's not perfect and does
Hopefully.
make mistakes?
I mean, it's kind of boring if you create a perfect character who never does anything wrong. Maybe most of this audience, you're far too young to remember a program like Dynasty. Anybody remember Dynasty? And you had the Joan Collins character, she was a bitchy one and so on. And then you had the Linda Evans character, who was utterly perfect, you know, so perfect it makes you sick every time. And I thought, no. So one of the exercises I do when I'm working with students is to, I want you to write about, just give me some bullet points about the person you hated most at school. And so the students go, yeah, I'm going to do that. Oh, I really hated this bitch, man. She was a bitch to me, so there's a whole list, and so on. And then I say, okay, now write about, give me some bullet points about the person you like best at school. And so they do that. And I say, okay, marry them together and make one character. And see where we go with that. And so that's what I like to do. I like to create characters who are flawed, who don't necessarily make the right choices all the time, who are, you know, because of their living circumstances, sometimes they're found wanting. Sometimes they're desperate. Sometimes, you know, when the pressure hits them, they make a wrong turn. But, you know, that's what learning is all about. That's what living is all about, isn't it? Because I don't know any perfect families. I don't know any perfect people. I don't know people who always make the correct... No, I don't. So we have to reflect that in what? I have to reflect that in my fiction. Mm-hmm. So Mo comes from there, and I think, you know, you can warm to her, you can rage at her, but, you know, at the end, hopefully, you get to love her.
Mm-hmm. Great. So we know that we get questions from the audience, so begin to become brave and think about what you might ask. Can you talked about dialogue, but one of the things one thing I was impressed with at first when I was reading it was how, wow, Alex really knows the slang, doesn't he? And then I read in The Guardian that you make some of the slang up.
Yes, I do.
So I was even more impressed.
Okay, confessional. Round about, I published a book called The Dirty South. That was my last book set in Brixton, South London. And I went to a school right in the heart of Brixton. You know, it was, and I'm always proud to go to a local school, you know, a school where maybe I've known friends of mine who attended there when they were kids and so on. So I'm always walking in with a swagger, you know, yeah, Alex is coming home now, yeah, I feel good, I feel good. And so I was reading The Dirty South to this very receptive audience, well, I imagine to be receptive anyway, you know, feeling all good. And then I've done the Q&A, I've started the Q&A. You know, I've heard the applause ringing around the auditorium. I'm thinking, yeah, I'm doing really good here. And then this girl puts up her hand, a young girl, she's about 15, 16, you know, something like that. She looks at me and she does a thing with her head. She said, Alex, Alex, man, you know, she's got the Brixton slang on point. She's got, Alex, man, we don't chat like that. Them phrases are ancient. I thought, what? Some of the phrases in the book, man, they're ancient. We don't chat like that anymore. I thought, what are you talking about? It's, nah, we don't, man. You're too old, man. I thought, no. And so, and she was right. She was right. I mean, I cannot pretend that, you know, I'm down with the young people anymore, especially in South London or any other inner city. So I thought to counter that, you know, when I decided to write young adult fiction, first of all, I had to invent a fictional town, Crongton. So that meant I had a blank canvas. And also, it made me more creative. It really did, and I really enjoyed that. So I could explore the language, and I could steal. Any aspiring writers, it's okay to steal. Writers steal all the time. They won't admit it. I will, but trust me, writers steal. And so part of the property that I stole was from hip-hop, was from reggae, was from dancehall culture, was from films that I admired. I'm a massive fan of film noir. I'm a massive fan of Raymond Chandler. I'm a massive fan of films like The Maltese Falcon. I'm a massive fan of Humphrey Bogart. And I recommend any of those genre films, you know, for any aspiring writer to watch, because if you want to learn anything about dialogue, watch those films. I mean, obviously, you still have to, I'm sure creative writing lecturers and so on say, oh, you got to read and read and read. Yes, you do have to read, but sometimes you have to listen. You have to listen, you know, by the masters of the genre. And the masters of the genre, in my opinion, were working in Hollywood in the 40s and 50s, the writers at those times in film noir. A few films I could name for you, The Black Dahlia, Death Comes Easy, there's so many. Anything that's got Humphrey Bogart in it, anything that's got Gloria Graham in it with femme fatales and whatever, the dialogue in those films is just extraordinary. It really is. And so I pay attention to that. So when I'm sitting down now, I have all those influences to play around with. And I can't get it wrong because Crongton is fictional. So in a way, I'm cheating. But, you know, all good writers, they borrow. I mean, I've heard writers of, you know, Chandler talk about how he used the writers of the 20s and, you know, 1920s and so on to shape his artistic form, if you like. Mm-hmm. And it definitely works with music as well. In all the art forms, we have to borrow from the past. Just the other day, I watched this documentary about the New Orleans singer-songwriter. Remind me of his name, guy who passed away the other day.
Johnny Merther?
No, Fats Domino, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Fats Domino. And Fats grew up in New Orleans, and he said he borrowed from the piano players of the 20s and 30s. And so artists were always borrowing. And if you want to write, it's okay to borrow and just reshape and retune and refine for a modern audience. And that's all I'm doing with my Crongton books. I'm just learning from the past, letting that influence me, and then creating what I believe is something quite new and fresh for today's market, you know, or today's world, or today's environment.
I just want to tell my students in Great Writers Steal that I did not pay Alex to say this. I didn't.
It's so true.
Even buy him a drink, because I'm teaching a module called Great Writers Steal. So
yes, they do.
Thank you very much for that little plug.
Yeah.
So how did you go about making up slang? That must have been fun.
Yes, it was. I was a DJ back in my late teens and early 20s. Basically, before I became a writer, I wanted to be the new Bob Marley. That was my, you know, that was my thing. I was a massive reggae fan. I thought, I want to crowd surf. I want to do all that, jump into a mosh pit, and you know. And the DJ culture in Brixton, when I was there, it was so competitive, and Brixton was the party town of South London. It really was. And because of that, you had sound systems springing up everywhere. And sound systems meant microphone time. And so I used to beg these guys, let me have the mic, and oh, who you, shut up, sit down. But finally, I got my chance, and I could, express myself on the microphone, try to be a DJ. And at first, I tried to imitate all the others around me. But then people would say, oh, I'm nothing but a plagiarist, or I think back in the day, the slang was you're a pirate, if you copy somebody else, word for word. And that's what I was doing. I was copying word. I wasn't trying to improve. I was copying word for word. So that's when I realized, I've got to come in a different style. I've got to come in a fresh way. And for me, writing is no different. I don't want readers to pick up my book and just open it in the middle and think, this is like so-and-so or like so-and-so, whatever. This is, oh my God, this is definitely an Alex Wheatle book. You might not enjoy the reading or the experience of reading my text, but no doubt this is Alex Wheatle text. And so I'm just trying to put that individual stamp on my writing. And I think if you want any longevity in this business, that's what you got to do. You got to have your USP. You got to have your identifying mark, if you like, on your work. Try to be original if you can. Yes, borrow from the greats, but try to form your own kind of, you use that and mix it up. I call it my little cooking pot, my little literary cooking pot. I mix it up, with I like to bend the English language, so greedy becomes grabalicious and so on. I like to play with words like that. Just like, J.K. Rowling does the same thing, Raymond Chandler did the same thing. And so I just put a kind of urban spin on it. So I find it very enjoyable. And writing adult fiction can be very wearisome, but now I've got this blank canvas, if you like, this Crongton. I could go wherever I like with it and not be restrained in any way by any smarty pants 15-year-old girl sitting in the front row telling me that I'm getting it wrong. So.
Well, can we hear another bit of reading?
Yes, okay. Crongton Nights. And again, it comes from real situations. Like sometimes I volunteer to do some youth work in South London. And we had one distressed young lady who was very scared about going home because she had lost her phone. Well, not lost her phone, her boyfriend had, stolen the phone. It was his revenge because she broke up with him. She was 15, he was 21. So she's still a schoolgirl. And she said to us, I can't tell my dad. Why can't you tell your dad? Oh, he's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. Why is he going to kill you? Oh, because there's some stuff on the phone. You know where this is going. So there's inappropriate images on this phone of hers, and she's losing her mind because she's fearing that her boyfriend or ex-boyfriend might upload this to some social site or whatever. So that was the seed I needed to build this story. And so one of the lead characters is Venetia, and this is what happens to her. She loses her phone to her ex-boyfriend. But the hero of this story is Mackay, and he lives at home with his father and his older brother who doesn't not get on with his father. And he roams the estate at night on his bike. Sometimes he gets into trouble, sometimes he doesn't. But Mackay, he's promised to help this girl try to get her phone back. And so they go off to the bad ends of Crongton to confront this boyfriend to try to get the phone back. So I'll just read to you a slice of this. Gloria Richardson House was 4 stories high and about the length of a football pitch. There were no lifts. Led by Bit, we started to climb the steep concrete steps leading to the upper floors. My heart started to pound again, and not just because I wasn't exactly in gold medal shape. This was proper scary now. When we reached the 2nd floor, Bit stopped. Everyone good? He asked. Me and Jonah nodded yes. But what we both meant was, are you crazy? Of course not. Syra linked arms with Venetia and said, course, she was one brave chick. My heart even stopped drumming for a second. I took in a big gulp of air. Venetia didn't answer. She simply stepped ahead of us and made her way along the balcony. She moved like an Olympic gymnast, graceful. Her trainers didn't make a squeak. We followed in single file. I started to flex my fingers, bit crunches fingers into fists. A car revved in a forecourt. I caught a whiff of someone nearby cooking fish. Reggae music was playing from one of the flats above. We had almost reached the end of the balcony when Venetia slowed down, stopped outside a blue door, closed her eyes, breathed in, breathed out and said, we're here. You still want to do this? Asked Syra. Venetia nodded. Step back a bit, she advised. I'm going to ask them to give me back my phone on the level. I don't want any drama. Okay, said Bit. Of course, said Jonah. We drew back about 3 meters. Venetia slapped the letterbox. She shuffled her feet as she waited. She stretched her fingers. She took in another breath. And then she said a silent prayer. My insides were flinging custard pies at each other. The reggae music blared out. The bass line was solid. Then there was a noise at the door. The drawbridge opened. You're here, said a voice with an Italian accent. So glad you made it. I would have picked you up like usual on my bike. I'll come for my phone, said Venetia bluntly. Can we talk first, said Sergio. I just wanted to see you again so we could settle things. Please hear me out, V. I'm so sorry. We're done, Sergio. End of, finito. There ain't anything to chat about or to settle. I'm sorry, but just give me back my freaking phone. Can you just come inside and talk? Let me say sorry properly. We can get through this, V. It'll be different from now on. We'll go out more. I'll take you to that theatre place you're always talking about. I'll come to your dance performances. I won't be so, what do you say, demanding. Suddenly, Bit burst forward, barged past Venetia and pushed Sergio back into his castle. Give me back her phone. Syra and me rushed in after him. The scene inside was like Rocky 10. Sergio pummeling Bit on the ground, Venetia clawing at Sergio's face. It was bonkers. I wasn't sure what came over me, but without thinking, I rushed up to Sergio, pulled my fist back and detonated the left side of his face. Sergio rocked back into the hallway, half turned and fell on top of Bit. My knuckles screamed. Venetia looked at me like I was a fat kid in a playground that had suddenly turned into the heavyweight champion of the world. I wasn't sure what to do after that, but Syra had it covered. She jumped on Sergio, grabbing his ears and started yelling, "Where's my friend's phone?" I saw that Bit was struggling to get back to his feet, so I pulled him up. His soul was willing, but his legs might as well have been made of pasta. I caught him before he dropped again, helped him out of the flat, then hot-footed it back. While Syra was still mooring Sergio, Venetia bolted down a lino-covered hallway into a room to the right, just before the kitchen. It was clearly Sergio's bedroom. I noticed a framed picture of Fabio Cannavaro hanging on one wall and a photo of the Italian football team on another. Where is it? Where is it? This was Jonah. He had finally found his courage and came in screaming his Zulu warrior cry before jumping on Sergio like he was in WrestleMania. Sergio tried to fight back, but Jonah held his legs down in a lock so tight that I thought he'd break them into small pieces of ravioli. Still, he kept struggling like a koala bear trying to hold on to an elephant's foot, and I could see Jonah was getting tired. So I took a mad run up and dropped my ass hard onto Sergio's chest. It seemed the thing to do. Sergio let out an airy grunt. His eyes popped out like someone was playing pinball with him. For some reason, I felt hungry for chocolate cheesecake.
You've got some great similes and metaphors that I've been sort of noticing throughout both of the readings.
That's the DJ in me.
Is it?
It is. It's the DJ in me. It's because you always want to have something up on your peers. And I remember in my youth, we used to, I'm sure you did the same, you listened to albums repeatedly,
Yeah.
and we would analyze albums repeatedly. The Grateful Dead, the Beatles' White Album, of course, reggae was there too, Bob Marley, Peter Tosh. We'd just dissect the lyrics and try to work out the meanings of songs. And I think from that experience, you know, I had a love for simile, metaphor, and so on, and trying to present things in a different way. Again, just trying to be individual.
Yeah.
trying to be me, trying to, so, and I was always wary of my editor, my first editor, saying, Alex, if I see a cliche, I'm going to beat you up. That's what he used to say to me. No cliches. Okay. And so I worked really hard on that, and sometimes it's okay. Sometimes it's okay for, especially if you're an aspiring writer, that if because sometimes automatically we write a cliche. Get up, give yourself a slap. Give yourself a slap. And then you walk around the room for 10 minutes. And if something doesn't come into your head immediately, that's okay. Leave it until the next morning or 2 days later. And then finally something pings. Oh, right, I've got a nice metaphor. Then you put it in. Don't rush it. Wait for it to happen. Yeah. And then it will read so much better than a cliche or something that's been done before. And then when readers read your work, they thought, oh, this is original. This is fresh. This is, they're going to want to read more of that. Mm-hmm. So there's a payoff. There's a payoff if you do take your time with similes and metaphors and think about it rather than write the first thing that comes into your head.
Mm-hmm. So I'm looking for questions. Yes?
So Crongton is sort of a fictionalized version of South London.
Not necessarily South London. I like to think that it could be anywhere. I mean, I know, obviously I'm known for writing about South London, but Crongton itself is in the middle of nowhere, so it could be anywhere.
Okay. So I wanted to ask, do you think at the moment there's a bit of discussion about writers writing about places and other people's stories or places they're not from, and whether that's an okay thing?
Yeah, I think so.
What your opinion was on that?
I think so. I don't think you should confine yourself to a particular area where you was raised or that's familiar to you. Writers should be able to write about anywhere. I mean, especially today where we have the internet. And so if we want to write about Newcastle, you can just Google Newcastle and find out the streets, the parks, or this, or that, And so it's a lot easier now to write about a different environment to what you're used to. So, yeah, why not? I mean, I used to be boxed in. Alex Wheatle, the Brixton writer, and that kind of got annoying because I felt my narratives were universal. I felt Brixton Rock was universal, East of Acre Lane was universal because I was writing about family themes, themes that we all share. I mean, East of Acre Lane, my second novel, that was inspired by Steinbeck, East of Eden, with the idea of a young man believing that his father loved his brother more than he did. I mean, that is the skeleton of East of Acre Lane, even though it's set against the backdrop of the Brixton riots of 1981. What holds it together is this idea. And many people still have this. When I speak to young people, I mean, okay, hands up. Let me do an experiment here. Hands up those who believe that a sibling was treated better than you were by your parents. There you go. So it's universal themes I'm playing with. And so there's no reason why you cannot set your stories wherever you choose. And I champion that. Go for it. If you want to set where would you like to set a story?
Like in the US?
Yeah, then why not?
Yeah.
Why not? As long as you're culturally informed about where you're setting it, there's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. So go for it. Do your research.
Other questions? Yes.
It seemed from when you described your thoughts behind your opening line, it seemed that you had an objective. You were just trying to find the best way to put it together and have the reader understand something. Would you say, even in the two scenes you read out for us now, would you say you were like, okay, by the end of the scene, I want the reader to understand this and this about these characters or where the plot's going or whatever, and then you kind of tinkle, you move it around, and then you come up with a perfect scene?
Yes, you're right. In the scene in Crongton Nights, it's a bit climactic. And basically, sometimes in our lives, we're going to come to a flee or fight situation. And that was my flee or fight situation here. And hopefully the readers can feel that. You know, the tension of what are these characters going to do at this point? Who's going to run? Who's going to stay? Who's going to fight? And so, and then the proofs in the writing, what happens there. And I try to keep to the characters' traits in this situation. Yes, I'm setting you up, basically. I'm manipulating you all the time, you know, all the time. And every work that I've written, I'm always trying to manipulate the reader. And so scenes like this help me define the readers, the characters, you know, define the characters, if you like. I'm defining them for you, so you can decide whether you like them or not, or like their decisions or not. You always have to give your characters choices, and that leads to dramatic tension, if that makes any sense. And so, like in this scene, I'm saying, okay, is this character going to run or not? In this scene again, it's quite an intense kind of scene. But in the reader's mind, what I'm trying to plant is how far is Mo going to go with this? How brave is she going to be? You know, she's standing up to her mother, she's standing up to her mother's boyfriend. How far is she going to bring this? You know, this is, you know, and so that is what accelerates your reading. You thinking, oh my God, you know, has she really done this? How far is she going to go with it? You know, is she going to back off? Is she going to say, okay, I can't do this anymore? Is she going to run out? What's going to happen next? And so I'm planting these seeds in the reader's mind all the time. And again, we have to try and put choices in the main character's head, you know, and then that creates dramatic tension. And also, I'm not sure if any of you notice that when I come to these scenes, my sentences shorten. It's a very good literary trick that was taught to me by my first editor. Very important. Like for instance, if I describe my journey here, say it's a late night, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I said, I'm coming to rob the place. I look behind me, no one was there. I mean, in those 3 sentences, you can feel the tension.
You're almost rushing, you're like...
So in fact, the human brain will want to read that bit quicker because you want to get to the end game. So that's why authors sometimes, especially in crime, they shorten the sentences to accelerate the reading. And the heart starts to go as well without you even realizing it. So it's a good trick to have, not to have all the time, not if you're describing a lovely piece of, you know, like Steinbeck, you know, he's great for that. You know, the opening 30 pages of East of Eden is just about description of the Salinas Valley. So you can't use it there. But moments that are critical, climaxes in your book, you know, you've got powerful scenes, shorten the sentences. And it triggers something in the brain that you just want to read quicker. You know, I use it all the time, I'm not afraid to admit it. Again, I'm manipulating the reader emotionally.
Okay. Yes.
How you go about, I know it's quite a broad question, how you go about constructing a novel. I asked because 2 weeks ago, the writer in conversation then,
Yeah.
she kind of didn't necessarily even know how it would end, and didn't even always know what characters would come into play, but she'd write scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you kind of plan it out, have it all mapped out, and then fill in with writing?
I'm going to repeat the question because last time people couldn't hear it. She was wondering how Alex goes about structuring a novel and how much he knows when he starts it, is a quick summary.
I know the ending. It can change, it might change, but not too much from my original creation, if that makes any sense. It's like, I can only describe it as, okay, we're in Southampton. I want to get to Leeds. I can't see Leeds, but I know how to, I kind of know the roads where I can get to Leeds, even though I can't see Leeds. I know the kind of route. And so for me, my ending's like that. Like, Little Bit, my first teen novel, Little Bit, I had the ending before I wrote the first word. I really did. I didn't have the middle, but I had the ending. All I saw in my head was Little Bit being attacked at his front door by this gangster guy, Manjaro, and he broke his way in, but he couldn't go through with actually attacking a little bit because he saw his son, his baby son, crawling along the floor. That image was there from the very start of my creation. It was there. You know, I couldn't get it out of my head. I thought, my goodness, you know, I've got to use that. I've got to use that. And in fact, that image might have even came before I even created the character. I just had this, you know, this image in my head of this hard-nosed crime lord of the estate not being able to go through with this violent act because he saw his son crawling on the floor, you know, and something triggered in him that he couldn't go through a violent scene in front. Because the story is that the crime lord is the father of Littlebit's sister's baby. And so that was the set-up scene that I had. And that image, that ending, you know, I couldn't, and when I got to the ending, it virtually stayed the same. I hardly tampered with it, how it was in my head. As for the middle part of the book, I had to work that out. I had to work that out, you know. And basically, I started off with banter. Sometimes starts can be difficult. I mean, I had to struggle to get this start. I had to struggle to get that start. With a little bit, sometimes when I struggle, the best way for me to solve that is to just come up with some witty banter. Witty banter. And there's nothing more wittier than young teenage boys talking about girls. It's kind of like a cheat in a way. I'm kind of cheating, but I'm trying to make it humorous because you can pull in readers by humor as well as drama. Let's not forget that. Humor's a good way of pulling people into your story and getting them to like the characters. You know, especially if these characters are making you laugh. And so there's Lamar, there's Mackay, there's Jonah, and they're just having this banter. And they want to, again, I'm taking it from when I was at school. I remember when the girls were practicing netball, all the guys wanted to watch. All the guys wanted to watch. And I remembered that from my school days, so I started off a little bit with my three heroes trying to look through the window, the glass window of this door, looking at these girls practicing dancing, with all the banter going on, you know. And usually, in my case, it was like, you're never gonna go out with her, man. Nah, man, you're too ugly, you know, that kind of stuff. And everyone can relate to that. Everyone can relate to that because I'm sure, well, hopefully, I'm saying to the audience, you know someone like Jonah, you know someone like Mackay, you know someone like Lamar, you know, battling over this girl or whatever it may be. And so I'm going to pull you in that way because you know these people. You went to school with them. You probably joked around with them. So, hey, come and like them. I'm going to take you on a journey with these boys and these girls. You know, so everything is, what I believe, is relatable. So banter, that's a very good way to start a novel. Dramatic tension, as it is with Straight Outta Crongton. How did I start with Crongton Nights? I think it was, I think I did a bit of, yeah, it starts off with, my mum told me I was named after a Scottish granddad, Danny Mackay. Apparently, once a year, he served food to the best golfers in the world in some top-ranking hotel by the sea. I don't love golf, but Mum was proper proud of her grandpops. And so, for me, that's an interesting way to begin a novel. You know, it just plants in your head a bit of the family background of the person, you know, of my main protagonist. So, again, I thought of that for a number of days, just to make it interesting and fascinating and quite compelling. So there's many ways to start a novel, but I would say take your time. Don't just write the first thing that comes here. Take your time, it's okay, you know, to take time over that first paragraph. You can whiz through chapter 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, but take your time on the first page. Take your time.
Did you use these same strategies when you were writing books for adults? Or
Yeah,
was
more or
it
less.
any differences?
I could take my time. It didn't have to be so immediate, writing for adults, I felt. Didn't have to be so immediate. I think, no, tell a lie, East of Acre Lane was quite immediate. That was, again, I started off with a scene in my head. In fact, Top Boy, I think, stole it. They stole my idea. Basically, I have a Brixton crime lord take a young lad up to the top of a tower block and threaten to throw him off. So that was dramatic tension from the start. Brixton Rock starts in a very, very confined space in a police cell, which is kind of scary, because I'm introducing smells and I'm introducing the 5 senses, and so the reader immediately gets the pulse of the place, gets the feel of the place, and that's another trick. Use the senses if you can in dramatic scenes. That's another trick in my literary bag that I sometimes use to just give the reader a feeling of the main character's thought process. Just give them a feeling, and so to give them a feeling, you actually describe what this piece of wood feels. You actually describe what they're tasting on their tongue. You actually describe what they see in 3D. You actually describe the little kind of breeze going through the gel bars and so on. You describe that cobweb in the corner. Everything they can see, you're putting on the page. And so you haven't got a film, but you're placing your reader in that space. And that can be very powerful, very powerful.
Do you, so you write a lot about, kids growing up poor in the city, which is sort of your own background.
Yeah.
Do you feel there's a real importance for you to write about those communities, and who are you writing for?
Everybody. But I think it's important that everybody has a voice in fiction. When I was a young man, and I spent time in prison after the Brixton riots. That's well known. Fighting with the police and so on. And I was very fortunate because my cellmate was an avid reader, and he gave me a copy of The Black Jacobins by C.L.R. James. Then I was off into my reading world. I read everybody. Steinbeck was a favourite of mine. Charles Dickens, even Austen. I was reading Austen. I was reading everything that was in that library. And when I came out, I wanted to read about my own experience, my own place in the world, my own identity. And I went to the bookstores and I couldn't really find it. Never really located it. I could read about the American experience of young blacks living in New York, writers, favourite of mine at the time were Chester Himes, Langston Hughes, Richard Wright, Native Son. I loved all of that, but where was my experience? And I felt everyone deserved a place in fiction. And that drives me and motivates me up to this day, that I'm trying to give a voice to, I think, characters who don't necessarily have a voice in popular culture today. I mean, I remember there was this great rush of working class literature in the early 50s with the playwright John Osborne, and I remember in the 60s there was, I think there was Kes, was it Kes, or that was the 70s? So working class narratives are few and far between, whether you're white or black. And I just felt that, today's society, we need to hear all kinds of narratives emerging, not just from one particular place. And so in my little contribution is that even though these characters do make wrong turns, they can be flawed and so on, but they deserve their place. They definitely deserve their place just like anybody else in the literary canon. Why not? Why shouldn't they be discussed? Why shouldn't their lives be debated? Why shouldn't they be put center stage? You know, so I give them that prominence, I give them that voice. You know, that's my little contribution.
That's great. More questions? As I do at the sun of the light.
Just one hand over there.
Oh, great.
Just sort of continuing on with what you were saying, when you like first got out, did you find it hard to get published because you were obviously writing about like people who don't usually get written about? Like, do you struggle to get published at first?
Yeah, yes I did. I've got 27 rejection letters for Brixton Rock, but I went to a Stephen King event at the South Bank, and he said that he had over 50 for Carrie. So I thought, okay, I'm going to carry on till I get 50. You know, and Marlon James, he had over 70 rejections for his Booker winner, The 7 Killings,
Yeah.
which I've read, which is an amazing read, you know, and it's just finding the right person, I think, to who can appreciate your work, and that's what it takes, is perseverance. I think that's half the battle, is perseverance. But also, I was very naive. I was so naive. Like, I had handwritten my first manuscript, and by the time I was ready to take it to a literary agent, it had spliff burn holes in it, it had jam on it, it had coffee stains on it, and a friend of mine told me, oh, if you want to get published, you've got to look through the Writer's Yearbook. You all heard about the Writer's Yearbook? It's got all the contacts and addresses of the publishers in the UK and the US and all the agents and publishing houses. It's basically the publisher's Bible. It's about this thick, and every reference library should have one. And so I thought, okay, let me go to the reference library and pick up this Writer's Yearbook. So I picked it up and I thought, right, I want to be a millionaire. And so I targeted the most established, biggest literature agents in London. And that was Peter Fraser's Dunlop, I think it was. And I went through it because the address was in Chelsea Harbour. I thought, if I'm going to Chelsea Harbour, I'm into big money here. So along I went to Chelsea Harbour with my tatty manuscript, with the spliff burn holes in it and jam and so on. And so, I was quite cocky. So I walked in, and I was in a good place because I was in this glass kind of lift. It had fragrant flowers in the corner. I thought, yeah, man. And so I walked to reception and I plonked this manuscript, this tatty manuscript on his receptionist's desk. She had the headphones on and I thought, yeah, man, that's my book, man. And she looked up, is it? I said, yeah, man, Brixton Rock. It's going to be big, trust me. And she picked it up like this. And basically she told me I've got to learn to type. But, I think if I didn't have that naivety and I was aware of all the pitfalls, all the barriers, all the hurdles I had to get over to get published, I might have changed my mind, you know that? I might have changed my mind. But because I was so unaware of it all, I said to myself, why aren't they commissioning me? Why aren't they giving me £1 million advance? Why aren't they? Are these people stupid or what? So you've got to have, what I'm trying to say, you've got to have belief in yourself and the story that you produce. You've got to have that, and persevere with it and trust that you produce something of quality. And most writers have that. And that's why the Stephen Kings of this world, they don't care that they've been rejected 10, 20 times, they carry on. And while they carry it on, they're retuning their work, they're refining it, they're trying to make it that little bit better. And that's what I did, and that's what all writers have to go through. It's all a continuing process of trying to improve our work. So when we write a sentence, can I make that better? Is there a better way of saying this? Can I think of a better metaphor? Can I think of, something fresh? So that's the process we go through. And for me, it's quite enjoyable. So.
Unless someone has another, oh yes, we do.
Yeah, I want to know what happened next in the story.
I can't tell you that.
No, I mean with the manuscript. So
Oh, the manuscript. Well, to be honest, I kind of lost a bit of confidence when the young lady told me I've got to type. I thought, type? Oh my God, type! I've got to type. Mind you, this is 1994.
Most people are typing
um,
by then.
So I had an old hustler friend, one of my Brixton old hustler friends, and because I slung my manuscript under the bed, and I didn't think of it for another 6 months, but I had a Del Boy character kind of like friend. You know, they're all over South London back in the day. And I saw him on a 109 bus, and he sat next to me. He said, Alex, man, I heard that you want to be a writer. Is that true? You want to be a writer? I said, yeah, I kind of dabbled. Alex, I've got this typewriter, man. I've got this typewriter. Trust me, brand new, Japanese. You want to see the book, man? Trust me, it's brand spanking crisp biscuit. £10 to you as your brethren. I said it to you, man. 10 notes. What are you saying? What are you saying? So I went around to his place and showed him his typewriter. It was old. It was old. But I bought it. Yeah, man, it works, man. Don't worry, man. It works, man. Trust me, £10. Your way, man. And so I brought it home, plonked it on the dressing table, and you know. But finally, I got a bit quicker. And in fact, the local library were very good to me because in the end, I think they felt sorry for me because it was costing me a fortune to make copies.
Yeah.
In the end, they let me use a copy for free because I was sending it off to everybody. You know, that's how I got my 27 rejections.
Copying the...
Yeah, copying the manuscript. So, but there was a small press, Black Hammer Books. They took a chance, and here I am.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And then you told a great story about the HarperCollins, the editor who really championed you. Do you want to?
Yes.
That story was good too.
My first novel did pretty well, and so the big publishers started to take notice of me. And so I managed to get myself an agent for my second book. And she sold it to HarperCollins. And how that came about was in those days, editors could make decisions that if I want that author, I'm going to get that author. It's so different today, where now they have these grand acquisition meetings where it's not just the editors who are deciding whether a novel should be bought, it's the international sales people, the marketing people, you know, everybody in the publishing house basically, the publicists and so on. They all get a say on what is bought and what is not, and what not is bought. But my editor back in the day, a guy called Leo Hollis, fantastic editor, he taught me so much. He went to his acquisition meeting. There's only about 3 or 4 people there, just fellow editors, and he banged his fist on the table because they were unsure about whether this material could sell because it's urban, it's set in Brixton, he's worried who's going to buy this, you know. And but Leo, he banged his fist on the table, said, "I want to publish Alex Wheatle. I think he's fantastic. I want to publish him. I don't want to hear any argument." So he published me to critical acclaim. So. But he taught me a great deal, you know, it's, because once you're acquisition, it doesn't mean that the work's over. And I remember my first meeting with him. He had this very thick pencil, and my 700 beautiful words, he basically, the manuscript bled. You know, line here, line there, because one of the mistakes that early novelists make, and what I made a lot, was overwriting. Like, for example, I would have a scene where my main character, he was called Biscuit, and he lived at one end of Brixton, and his girlfriend lived at the other end. And his journey from his house to his girlfriend's house would take about 30 pages, because on the way, you know, he might look from his vantage point of the top seat of a bus and see a friend he went to nursery with, and then get off the bus and they have a conversation and so on about what was on the TV last night, then jump on the bus again, and then before he gets to his girlfriend's house, he might meet somebody else. You know, he might meet the doctor's daughter or somebody like that, and he might have another conversation, and Leo would say to me, "Alex, no, you got off on tangents. Keep to the narrative, keep the plot going, keep the narrative going. You cannot afford this, you know. Where's the doctor's daughter in the great scheme of things in this novel? Are they going to have any impact on the outcome? No. Get rid of him. Get rid of him. Kill him. Just get rid of him. Delete him." And so that is why my manuscript bled. And so these are all things you learn when you know, you're trying to make your way in this world, in the writing world.
Well, we're all very happy that Leo fought for your novel and for Black Hammer as well. I think that's a great place to stop. So thank you so much, Alex.
you.
It was so wonderful.